Father Goes to Court by Carlos Bulusan. When I was 4, I lived with my mother and my brothers and my sisters in a small town in the island of Luzon. Father's farm had been destroyed in 1918 by one of our sudden Philippine floods. So, several years afterwards, we all lived in town, though he preferred living in the country. We had as a next neighbor, a very rich man whose sons and daughters seldom came out of the house, while we boys and girls played and sung in the sun. His children stayed inside and kept the windows closed. His house was so tall that his children could look the window of our house and watch us played or slept or ate when there was any food in the house to eat. Now, this rich man's servants were always frying and cooking something good, and the aroma of the food was wafted down to us from the window of the big house. We hung about and took all the wonderful smell into our beings. Sometimes in the morning, our whole family stood outside the windows of the rich man's house and listened to the musical sizzling thick strip of bacon or ham. I can remember one afternoon when our neighbor's servants roasted 3 chickens. The chickens were young and tender, and the fat that dripped into the burning coals gave off an enchanting odor. We watched the servants turn the beautiful bird and inhaled all the heavenly spirit that drifted out to us. Some days, the rich man appeared at the window and glowered down at us. He looked at us one by one as though he condemning us. We are all healthy because we went out in the sun and bathed in the cold water of the river that flowed from the mountains into the sea. Sometimes we wrestled with one another in the house before we went out to play. We are always in the best of spirits, and our laughter was contagious. Other neighbors who passed by our house often stopped in our yard and joined us in laughter. As time went on, the rich man's children became thin and anemic, while we grew even more robust and full of life. Our faces were bright and rosy, but theirs were pale and sad. The rich man started to cough at night. Then he coughed day and night. His wife began coughing too. Then his children started to cough, one after the other. At night, their coughing sounded like the barking of a herd of seals. We hung outside their windows and listened to them. We wondered what happened. We knew that they were not sick from the lack of nourishment because they were still always frying something delicious to eat. One day, the rich man appeared at the window and stood there a long time. He looked at my sisters, who had grown fat and laughing, then at my brothers, whose arms and legs were like Kamulabe, which is the sturdiest tree in the Philippines. He banged down the window and running through his house, shooting all the windows. From that day on, the windows of our neighbor house were always closed, and the children did not come out anymore. We could still hear the servants cooking in the kitchen, and no matter how tight the windows were shut, the aroma of the food came to us in the wind, and it drifted gratuitously into our house. One morning, a policeman from Presidencia came into our house with a sealed paper. The rich man had filed a complaint against us. Father took me with him when he went into the town clerk and asked him what it was about. He told Father that the man claimed that for years we have been stealing the spirit of his wealth and food. When the day came for us to appear in court, Father brushed his old army uniform and borrowed a pair of shoes from one of my brothers. We are the first to arrive. Father sat on a chair in the center of the courtroom. Mother occupied a chair by the door, and we children sat on a long bench by the wall. Father kept jumping from his chair and stabbing the air with his hands as though he were defending himself before an imaginary jury. The rich man arrived. He had grown old and feeble. His face was scarred with deep lines. With him was his young lawyer. Spectators came in and almost filled the chairs. The judge entered the room. He sat in a high chair. We stood in a hurry, then sat down again. After the court preliminaries, the judge looked at the father.
Do you have a lawyer?
He said.
I don't need a judge.
Father said.
Proceed.
The rich man's lawyers jumped up and pointed his fingers at father.
Do you or you do not agree that you have been stealing the spirit of complaints, wealth, and food?
I do not, father said.
Do you or do you not agree that while the complaints servants cooked and fried legs of lamb and young chicken breast, you and your family hung outside his windows and inhaled all the heavenly spirit of the food?
I agree, father said.
Do you or you do not agree that while the complaints and his children grew sickly and tubercular, you and your family became strong of limbs and fair in complexion?
I agree, father said.
How do you care that?
Father got up, paced around, scratching his head thoughtfully. Then he said,
I should like to see the children who complain, Judge. Bring in the children who complain.
They came in shyly. Spectators covered their mouths with their hands. They were so amazed to see the child thin and pale. The children walked silently to a bench and sat down without looking up. They all stared at the floor and moved their hands uneasily. Father could not say anything at first. He just stood by his chair and looked at them. Finally, he said,
I should like to cross-examine the complaint, Judge. Proceed. Do you claim that we stole your wealth and became a loving family, while yours became morose and sad?
Yes.
Do you claim that we stole the spirit of your food by hanging outside your window while your servants cook it?
Yes.
Then we are going to pay you right now,
Father said. He walked over to where we children sitting on the bench and took the straw hat out of my lap and began filling it up with centavo pieces that he took out his pocket. He went to Mother, who added a fishful of silver coins. My brother threw in their small change.
May I walk to the room across the hall and stay there for a few minutes, Judge?
Father,
as you wish. Thank you,
Father said. He strode over to the other room with the hat in his hand. It was almost full of coins. The door of both rooms were wide open.
Are you ready?
Father called.
Proceed,
the judge said. The sweet tinkle of the coins carried beautifully in the courtroom. The spectators turned their faces towards the sounds with wonder. Father came back and stood before the complaints.
Did you hear it?
He asked.
Hear what?
The man asked.
The spirit of the money when I shook this hat.
He asked. Yes. The man said.
Then you are paid,
Father said. The rich man opened his mouth to speak and fell to the ground without a sound. The lawyer rushed to his aid. The judge pounded his gavel.
Case dismissed,
he said. Father strutted around the courtroom and the judge even came down to shake hands with him.
By the way,
he said,
I had an uncle who died from laughing. Do you like to hear my family laugh, Judge?
Father asked.
Why not? Did you hear it, children?
Father said. My sister started it. The rest of us followed. Then soon, the spectators were laughing with us, holding their bellies and bending over the chairs. And the laughter of the judge was the loudest of all. Ha 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 ha! My Father Goes to Court by Carlos Bulusan. Mao na to pato.